Welcome back, everyone, to the Broker Room Podcast. I'm Michael Simon, and today we have Ryan Narus joining us. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Pleasure to have you here. And Ryan, you certainly have one of the more inspiring stories I've heard. In just 11 years, you've gone from quitting your job, sleeping on a blow-up mattress in a mobile home you managed yourself, to owning 87 communities and over 4,700 units with Archimedes Group. And on top of that, you taught yourself computer programming, Spanish systems and processes, all with practically zero resources and network. So, you're certainly a true example of taking the red pill and building your own path. And, having said that, let's start at the beginning here. You bought the traditional work hard, retire on a beach story, then realized, like many of us in this day and age, that it may not be what was as advertised. So you spent 3 years searching for the right business, eventually landed on mobile home parks, quit your job, and went all in. So, walk us through it, the challenges, the grind, and how you scaled to where you are today.
Yeah, well, again, thank you for having me here. I'm here because I want to help inspire others. Because as we go through my story, Michael, your audience is going to be very underwhelmed with how much I am just a normal, dorky white guy. I am not that smart or that hardworking or that special. What it all comes down to is what people don't want to hear and don't want to admit, which is that we get in our own way. It's really,
Mhm.
life is really a lot simpler than any of us would like to admit. Because when tough times get tough, we, as smart, intelligent beings, figure things have to be complicated when the reality is they're not. So I think the biggest challenge in all of this is just overcoming my own psychology. So let me just give you a quick overview. So I've always, from a young age, fought to be honest with myself and to keep my ego in check and to just really try to figure out who I am and what makes me happy and really truly brings me joy. And it took many, many, many years and many, many jobs to figure out what I liked and didn't like. And it's really tough because you want to have the answer today. And it turns out it can take years. So I discovered I was meant to be an entrepreneur in 2012. The reality is, I've been alive for a lot longer than that, and it took me many years to get to that moment. And then in 2012, I went, hooray, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. But wait, what the heck am I going to start? I don't have any money. So fast forward 3 years and three failed businesses later. And in 2015, July of 2015, I discovered mobile home parks. Checked all the boxes. I was pumped. I also didn't have any money. So I went, okay, I want to get into commercial real estate, which is a rich person's game with no money. Oh, yeah, no experience and no network. So how the heck do I do it? Well, 2 years later and three mobile home parks later, I was able to quit my banking job, move into a mobile home, sleep on a blow-up mattress, and just go all in. And while I'm there, I'm like, I'm going to work every day at improving my Spanish so I can become fluent. I have to automate because I can't hire anybody. I can barely hire myself. So mind you, I just want to recap. It took me 2 years to go from concept to going all in. So I wasn't like, rah, rah, quit my job tomorrow. It was like a year of proving the concept that it makes money and then another year of planning. And then I didn't really get back to my banking salary until like 2019, 2020. So, I mean, you're talking like 5, 6 years of time where I paid myself a whole lot of nothing. And the first year I lost money. And, just going full time doesn't mean you're there. No, I took another bunch of years paying myself nothing, sleeping on a blow mattress. Right. And now that we're coming on 11 years, Michael, people are like, oh my gosh, the overnight success. You're like, no, it took 11 years to get here. It was really painful and took a lot of sacrifice. But at the end of the day, it wasn't that complicated. You write, practice methodology and effort with a long-term mindset and comfortability, and most importantly, overcoming what's in between your two ears here and trying to develop courage and perseverance is way more impactful than trying to outsmart the market. No one's going to outsmart the market. You got to outsmart yourself, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Coming from, I used to be a financial planner, and it's the same idea. You can't outsmart the market. You gotta, like you said, try not to outsmart yourself. And
Yes.
human beings, we certainly are known for that. Definitely myself included, been there along the way. And, I really appreciate your thoughts on that. You got to stay disciplined, you got to stay committed, and you have to make sacrifices. Not many people would be willing to give up a cushy, banking salary for nearly 5, 6 years to, chase their dream. But, you played the long game, and here we are 11 years later, it paid off, and you're still building and growing on it today. So, kudos to you for that. And before we, talk a little bit about the present here, I would just want to ask, what would you say the biggest lesson from those early days, living in the park and doing everything yourself was the biggest takeaway?
I mean, there's a lot of different directions I can go in, but I think the most meaningful and impactful lesson that I haven't already said, right? Because the biggest lesson to me is overcoming your own psychology. Fear doesn't go away. Fear management replaces your inability to press forward, right? So courage is what you need, not lack of fear. But I think the most surprising thing when I quit and went full time is that I lost 15 pounds and changed nothing about my life. I think I probably ate worse because I had to eat like ramen noodles and frozen pizza. And it wasn't like I was working out it just, yeah, I call it my sad weight.
Mhm.
I was sad working at the bank. Not that the bank wasn't a lovely place. It's not that they didn't take care of me. It's not that I don't have friends from the bank I talk to this day. I just was not meant to be there. And it was surprising to me how happy I was, how fast I was happy, chasing my dreams, paying myself nothing. I went from a middle, maybe arguably middle, upper middle, kind of flirting with upper middle class trajectory to basically working class overnight. And I was happier sleeping on a blow up mattress without all the creature comforts of middle class America. And to me, what screams out about that is you have to chase your dreams. You have to, because the happiness is the journey, not the destination. And people get in their own way. They're like, oh, I got a mortgage. I got to send my kids to private school, or I got to drive a BMW, or I got to do this, that, or the other thing. And it's like, do you? Or or could it be that it's not the benefits of reaching 87 communities, right? Because there's certainly perks. But like, I can't sit here, Michael, and tell you I'm happier today than I was when I started, because I'm not. I'm of equal happiness. My life is a little bit more interesting now, a little bit more comfortable. But like, my gosh, I was having fun. I still am. But my gosh, was I having fun. So much so that I lost 15 pounds. I would say that's the biggest takeaway for me starting out is like, man, when you finally like hit it and all that hard work, maybe it doesn't financially reward you in that moment, but like you can start to see it and you're doing it for yourself and you've stuck your middle finger up to the man and say, I'm going to do it for myself and it's starting to work. That is a joy that the honeymoon phase has yet to wear off. However many years later, when I went full time in 26, so 9 years later, it's amazing. So please, ladies and gents, bet on yourself. It's awesome.
I'm in full agreement. And that's a tremendous, again, really good story, great lesson to take with us, going forward for everyone. And thank you again for talking about, how you got started, the journey, the process. Now, fast forwarding a bit more to the present here, the mobile home park space is often called, as you said earlier, a rich man's game, and yet you broke in, with next to nothing. So, if we look at what the trends are today, what's going on in the mobile home park space, what trends would you say you're seeing right now in manufactured housing and the mobile park industry?
Oh, private equity is flooding in,
Mhm.
and it's definitely creating issues. That being said, I don't want to discourage people from getting in. It's just different. So it's not that there are no entry points now. It's just that the way you get into mobile home parks today is fundamentally different than, going on 11 years ago when I found mobile home parks. And when you study any business, not just real estate or mobile home parks, but like literally any business, it's all cyclical. It's all a roller coaster. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. And in all scenarios, things change. Everything has
Yeah.
an expiration date. And that's the fun part about business. The fun part about business is you don't have a manual book. You have your own wits and ability to go and make sacrifices, be courageous, be creative, really exhaust all your resources, your network, your capital, your ability to learn and build skills. To me, despite private equity rushing in, I still think there's more reason to get excited about mobile home parks today than possibly ever.
Mhm. And, let's, tack on to that a little bit. So, you said private equity has, entered in the space quite a bit. How would you say that's affected things like, affordability, regulations, and investor interest?
Oh, I mean, all of the above. So let's hit those one at a time. First and foremost, the customer changes. The customer, when private equity is introduced, goes from the end consumer, in my case, the people who are living in my communities, when I am in control and the onus is on me to execute, given my investor base, the right answer is always to invest in the tenants because they're paying your bills. But when you have private equity come in, their focus is their investors. And so they're basically securitizing the cash flows that spit off of these communities. And yeah, they'll come in, they will do some good. I'm not going to sit here and say private equity is all bad. That's not true. They'll do things like help fight zoning laws to improve zoning and protect these assets to keep the bulldozers and developers away, so to speak. They will unlock units, bring in new units, nicer units, but they're going to want a return on their investment that exceeds what I would want. And therefore, they're going to jack up rent. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to jack up rent beyond, people are ultimately going to vote with their wallet. So they'll leave, abandon the home, sell the home, pull the home, whatever. Folks will vote with their wallet, but the problem is for overall affordability, it's going to be less affordable in quick short order. In terms of legislation, well, we're already seeing rent control coming down in a lot of different states, and it's trying to force its way in. Rent control is a colossally bad idea. I don't care if you're a liberal or conservative. That is never the right answer because the landlord is the last person in a really long value chain. What do I mean by that? Well, you pay your rent to your landlord. Who's the landlord paying? The guy pumping the septic tank, the guy who's trimming the trees and cutting the grass, the insurance company, the bank, the this, the that, the power company. It goes on. Their employees, right? Their employees. What do their employees want? They want raises and bonuses, right? What does the power company want? More money. What is the septic guy doing every year? Raising his rates. So you have this long value chain of people who have their hand out to the landlord, but the landlord is the only customer facing entity within that value chain. So folks who don't do their research and think, well, like, oh, this is evil landlords. Well, is it? Or is it the septic guy who's doubled his rate because he's the only show in town? Right. And when you look at it from that perspective, you realize like rent control is only going to hurt further future investment. It's not going to keep money down or affordability down. It's going to basically prevent people from investing. And also, if you look at like New York State, they enacted a rent control on mobile home parks. Do you know what's happening? As soon as someone moves out, the next person who comes in is at an overinflated rate. So you're just delaying the inevitable. And a lot of people have lost a lot of money and have stopped investing in their properties because they simply can't afford it. And so they'll let someone leave the community rather than fix a septic tank. I saw that with my own two eyes literally last week in New York State. And then what is it, so legislatively, it can be a disaster if we aren't smart about it, right? And then in terms of investors, like, what do investors want? Well, they want what every rich person wants: more money. So now that mobile home parks is a little bit more popular, unfortunately, it's like Evil Knievel, where he was like, I had just set the world record. I jumped over my motorcycle on my motorcycle over like 20 buses, and I went to a local bar to get a beer, and I sat down at the bar. The guy next to me didn't recognize me. I came on the TV, and the guy turns to me, still doesn't recognize me, and he goes, I heard Evil Knievel jumped 50 buses. Right? And Evil Knievel was like, that was the day I quit. Wasn't that I was scared. It wasn't that my body wasn't working. It's that didn't matter how many buses I jumped. I was never going to live up to this guy's expectations, or really anybody's, right? And that's what happens when an industry gets popular. Is now you have a ton of investors who are like, oh, I heard you can make all this money in mobile home parks. And you're like, well, just like Evil Knievel, like something was lost in translation here, right? So there's a lot of pressure now from a lot of different angles, Michael, but I don't want to be like the old guy who's like, back in my day. The reality is, like, there's a ton of really new, niche, interesting ways to get involved in this space. And people can and should, because we desperately need good landlords to control affordable housing.
Yeah, politics aside, I think that really does get lost in translation, the concept of the landlord. Some people think that, they have this big bad, persona where they might just be greedy or whatever else it may be, but they forget, the landlords, it's not that just they're taking all your money and then that's it. That's it. They run away with it. They have their bills to pay. They got to pay all the people that you rattled off and taxes and, God knows what else. So that's unfortunately a concept that I think gets lost on many people. And then with respect to the rent control, yeah, I don't know really how that's expected to turn out. I'm very happy that I'm not in the New York area having to deal with that, but I guess, time will tell. Like you said, it's already off to a pretty rocky start, and, we'll see, unfortunately, what happens from there. But, you did say, though, you're very, optimistic regardless. You said that, more people should be, getting into this. And, for some people who may be considering it or are in the early stages, what do you think, most people get wrong about this niche? Why do you think that, not everybody would necessarily succeed?
It's just expectations outside of, again, overcoming your the own demons in your mind, so to speak. Expectations have to be correct. So I have not one but two podcasts: mobile home parks in real life and the 30-day mobile home park, and both of those are geared to do very specific things. Mobile home parks in real life is geared to strip you of your delusions and give you the IRL in real life. You need to understand what this is, what this isn't, what this will never be, and what it might be. Number one. And then number two, the 30-day MHP is like, look, it took me 2 years to get full time in this asset class. Yeah, I didn't have any money, didn't have experience, network, yada, yada, yada. But like, if I was to start over today, I know exactly who to call, exactly what to do, and exactly how to raise the money. There is no reason why I should hoard this wisdom. I can help people get started way faster. And I argue that I should and need to, because again, the wrong landlords that come into this asset class will ruin it for everybody else. Because, why does it say on your McDonald's coffee, like, caution hot? It's because one person burned themselves, right? Like, now I know that's been debunked, but like, why do you, when you open a pack of batteries, it says don't eat it? Well, because some knucklehead ate the battery and like hurt themselves, right? Like, it's just like all you need is one bad egg to just ruin it for everybody else. And so to me, the more good people we can encourage to get off the sidelines, get in the game, the better. And so obviously I'll go into way more detail on this on my podcast. But again, my idea is to delete your expectations and reset them, sell you on why you should buy mobile home parks. Again, I don't need any money. I don't need anything from folks. Like, if you come in and you're a good person, you make the world a better place, then like, have my wisdom for free. That's what I'm after. I want the world to be a better place, right? But then also flatten that learning curve, get you in faster so we have more good landlords faster. That's kind of what's in it for me. But like, how do I condense, two podcasts into a couple sentences? I'd say more or less, people need to be better underwriters, and I don't mean better mathematicians. I mean, they need to be able to have vision beyond what spits out on the Excel output. So you don't need better underwriting, you need better vision to marry with your underwriting. You need to know where rent is going to go to, and you need a unique strategy. So with the influx of private equity money, that increases the pressure to be, if you will, conventional. So in other words, if you're going to go the conventional route and buy mobile home parks, you better be really, 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 really good. You better be a Goliath. Because if you're not really, 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 really good, you're going to lose. So therefore, if you're not going to be ultra conventional, you better be ultra unconventional, i.e. David. And to be honest, Michael, it's way more fun being David than Goliath. Expectations are zero. You get to like fling things at giants, and you can find new and creative ways to get in the space, and it exists. New York State is a great example. Everybody I've ever talked to has a guttural reaction. Oh, rent control. Oh, blue state. I don't even want to look at it. And to me, I'm going, well, maybe I should look at it. And because everybody's like, I don't want to touch this. Right? So maybe there's something there, because I know there's plenty of people there making plenty of money. And so
Yeah.
to me, if you're trying to get into this asset class, that's exactly what you ought to be doing. You ought to be going, okay, I either have to have a trust fund with millions and millions of dollars in it, I need to compete conventionally, or I need to go where people aren't going and do what people aren't doing in a way that's unique and effective, that marries vision. So my underwriting, my math has to be grounded in a dream that you have conviction will become a reality, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, it does. You have to have that conviction and, make sure you're doing your homework, staying on top of the trends. And like you said, if you don't have something, unique planned out, then, you're going to have quite a significant amount of resources just to try to compete with everybody else. I think we've seen that a lot in today's, day and age. It's not in that just that space, but, in real estate and other industries in general. And talking a little bit more now about the present, your practice, running 87 communities across what I assume is a multi-state operation comes with
Yes.
real complexity. So, what are the top challenges you and your team face today, whether it's operations, scaling, tenant relations, or just trying to stay ahead of a changing market?
Look, we could talk for hours about the different challenges and opportunities for improvement. What I will say is, if you ever doubted how litigious people are in the United States of America, go start a business, because it's just funny to me, man. Like, I'm in Florida, and I would say I get sued in Florida more than any other state by a multiple. And it's almost never anything that we as a company did or didn't do. There are an influx of ambulance chasing attorneys that do an unbelievable job marketing to
Yeah.
especially impoverished and working class people who would love a quick paycheck, not have to do anything, just get some money. And they with mathematical precision have figured out how to exploit insurance companies, which is a shock to people hearing that the reason why Florida insurance is out of control is not actually hurricanes. People go, oh, it's Florida, get hits with hurricanes, so insurance companies don't want to be there. I mean, that's a part of it, but there's also problems in their legislation, and it makes it incredibly easy for like roofing companies to run scams and ambulance chasing attorneys to force settlements when nothing happens. I mean, I have one right now that literally hit my desk this morning. Somebody's roof caved in. I don't even own the home, Michael. I don't even own the home. Their roof caved in. Our property manager went over to the house, thankfully with his camera on live and recording. The tenant the first thing he goes is, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, the roof kit, no, it didn't hit us. It's fine. We're fine. Like, look, we're fine. Like everything's cool. Yada yada yada." That was almost a year ago to the date. That was August of last year. So today is May. The statute of limitations is coming up,
Mm.
and they are suing us because apparently this is our fault. Mind you, a tree didn't fall in the house. It wasn't even raining. It was their home and their roof, and it's caved in. And then we have on a video them going, "Oh yeah, no, it didn't even hit us." And the lawsuit is like, "Oh, we've suffered severe physical injuries." And you can sit back and you can laugh, and you're like, "Well, this is stupid. This is gonna get thrown out." Well, it's not. You want to know why? Because technically, there's a non-0% chance in civil court that they will win. And because this is general liability and it goes to my insurance will go, "Well, we have approval to spend up to 25 grand or 50 grand or 75 grand to just write it off and have it go to a 0% chance of issue." And in Florida, it's even worse. It's even easier for attorneys to go and just cram in ridiculous lawsuits and just know all the right things to say to get insurance companies to just spill it out. And guess how much the tenants are going to get? So let's say they settle for 25K. Guess what the attorney's fees are going to be? Guess how much these folks are going to get? They might get a couple $1,000. These attorneys will walk away with 10, 20 grand in fees because their fees
Yeah.
are, X number of hours at X, right? And so you sit back and you're like, dude, like, can somebody please get an office here and change these laws to make insurance more affordable? And so you're like, maybe if that was on rich people, they could kind of stomach it, but this is on working class folks, school teachers, Starbucks baristas, people who work at McDonald's. Like these folks, like they need to have insurance because when they don't and something happens and they were uninsured, it's just sorry. We could crap on insurance for hours if you wanted to, Michael.
No, I know we could, and that's just such a shame. I didn't know, I knew they weren't gonna walk away with that much, but, like, a couple of grand from, like, 25K, it's not even really about them at that point, it's just about the lawyer and getting their fees, and that's
Correct.
that's about it. Just an easy payday for them versus any, real sense of justice or, if there really was some wrongdoing. I mean, if there was, but, it sounds like in most of the cases, it's just set up as a way for the lawyer to get their easy payday, and then that's that.
And they are incredibly persuasive because they're basically chasing these ambulances or these storm cars, right? And they're going to these folks and saying, "Hey, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to pay me if we lose. Here are all the ways we think they're liable." They pump them up. They say, "Sign here," and then they take all the fees. They take all of it. They leave these folks with next to nothing. I hate to say this, but $1,000 to $5,000 to someone who lives paycheck to paycheck can, in the short term, potentially be life changing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure is alleviated, and for them, they're like, I don't hate my landlord. It's just like, dude, I could really use 25. I could use $2,500, right? And they don't shop their attorneys. They don't do any of that, and it's just it's not that people are evil, Michael. It's that when incentives are set up such that people can do bad things, they will. They
Yeah.
will, especially if it's legal. So if ethics to the side, well, hey, technically it's not illegal. So it's just, yeah. Anyways, we can talk about happy things too.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's, it's an excellent point, though. I am still happy you brought that up and rose awareness to it, just, for our viewers to have that perspective. So thank you, regardless. But yeah, let's, shift gears a little bit here. My favorite topic, AI. So, this is one of the things we originally spoke about. You leaned hard into automation from the beginning, and now you're excited about, hey, how AI is changing the game. You said it, flattens the learning curve and lets new entrepreneurs outsource, the tedious $1 tasks so they can focus on relationships and mastery, which, I'm in full agreement with. So, how are you using AI today in your operations? And by extension, what excites you most about its potential?
Yeah, it does so much cool stuff for me. Speaking of law, it crunches through contracts, tells me vulnerabilities, tells me this, that, and the other. It's fantastic for low level law related items. It's fantastic for quick research that doesn't need to be spot on accurate. Obviously, it struggles with accuracy. Oftentimes, a lot of these LLMs are kind of more designed to give you confirmation bias to make you feel good than actually get you the right answer. That being said, it can save a ton of time. And it does a whole bunch of other stuff. You use Claude to help you build a website. I mean, it goes on and on and on. To me, the most useful bit of AI for me today is being able to quickly guess what rent is in an area based off Zillow, HUD data, as well as stuff like rent.com, apartment.com. So the AI will go and gather all of that data quickly for me, synthesize it, give me kind of a bell curve, if you will, of where we think rents are at, and then will quickly underwrite for me. And obviously, when you really need a complicated, well thought out, dump the hours in underwriting model, you take the time, but in a mere couple of seconds, you can kind of tell if you're in the ballpark or not. Right. So now I don't have to go spend 3 hours underwriting on an opportunity that was never going to make sense to begin with. All of a sudden, AI can say, hey, here's, 5 deals we think you should underwrite this week because it's close. Right. And so to me, that's been a game changer. But yeah, before we hit record here, I said something positive about AI and the potential doom that is coming because a lot of people are doomers. Like, look, it's just when I started, I saw a lane, and that lane involved me sleeping on a blow-up mattress, teaching myself Spanish, teaching myself accounting, teaching myself property management, teaching myself coding so I can automate stuff. So I can automate stuff like calculating late fees, texting people when their cash pay numbers and their balances, if they're late, all of these different things that would take hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Now, because I took a day to teach myself how to code it, and then I wrote the code, and now it's still working to this day. Now, all of a sudden, that's a job I don't need to go hire out. It's just done. And so that's not to say I want to lay people off or not hire folks. What I'm trying to say here is like when I started and I didn't have any money, I couldn't hire someone anyways. I had to go learn these skills and master these skills. AI now can do that fast. And because of that, the early on Ryan now doesn't need to spend as many hours doing the tedious stuff. Now I can go and get better at Spanish. I can go and cold call more and spend more time with brokers and investors. Now I can go and do the higher value activities. Meanwhile, the robot, if you will, goes and handles just the overly tedious stuff. Now, that's not to say that you can lean on this and just take shortcuts and now not build skills. You still need to build skills and the network and all that grinding that I did, that made me the person and investor and leader I am today. And you can't AI that away. But what you can do is it is so much more efficient with your time, especially on the front end. And to me, that's what makes today, getting started today, more exciting than ever, is now you can be so much more efficient with your skill building and network building and business building.
Yes, yes, you can. And it sounds like you've already leveraged it so far to great success. Is there anything currently that you're working on or that wish the AI could do that you're working towards, to help it bridge any other, gaps or make anything a bit more convenient?
Well, I mean, obviously fixing law would be great. Like obviously, so we could have affordable insurance would be great. But jokes aside, it's more than just that with politics. It's also NIMBYism. It's also not NIMBY stands for not in my backyard because folks just don't want affordable housing near them for a multitude of reasons. Politicians too, and of course, politicians lie about it. That stuff I don't think AI is going to solve anytime soon. It might. It's just not anytime soon. To me, there are a bunch of little instances I think would make a big difference, that maybe there's a way to get AI to work faster and more efficiently. So I'll give you a great, for example. We operate by and large with public utilities that are billed back. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is the water that comes into our community, the municipality or utility company stops, their responsibility stops at the front of the property with their master meter. What happens beyond that master meter, I got to pay for, regardless if I use the water or not. And then there is no meter until the individual homes. And what does that mean? There is hundreds of yards of potential leaks that basically we are paying to water the grass. And as a result, the people in these states that we're in, yeah, sure, fine, they'll pay for the water that passes through their meter and they use, but from the master meter to the individual meters, that's 100% on the property. And best case scenario, you recapture about 80% of what you're billed. So even if you are airtight, brand new infrastructure, yada, 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 man, there's always an elbow or a this or a that or a faulty meter that just misses something. And now you, the landlord, have to pay for that. And the best way to stay in front of that is with live recapture data. The problem is you get a bill from the municipality maybe once a month. We partner with Metron, which is great, but their meters are singular in nature and not continuous throughout the entire property. I don't have X-ray vision, and even if I did, I don't know if that'd work on grass and dirt, so I wouldn't be able to see if there's a leak there. And leak detection companies, they're more designed for like single family homes and not mobile home parks. Trust me, I've tried. And boy, if you could have an AI that could automate and alert you to leaks, guesstimate where they are, give you more, again, more lifetime data, because my data is really only good quarterly. Like my meters will tell me when they think there's a leak, but that's not overly, it's not going to tell me where it is or how to go fix it, right? So to me, that KPI, how are we doing on water recapture rates? That's a real serious. We lost, Michael, over $200,000 last year in money not billed to residents because of water leaks, and that's rounding down. It was actually probably closer to 250,000. So to me, that is a real measurable, and you got to think about like this. As I say, it's 200,000 at a 10 cap, which is way too high. That's $2 million worth of property value that is just erased annually, right? And then now imagine if we traded a 5 cap, right? So in other words, you're talking about millions of dollars, 8 figures worth of value that is lost to the ground because we don't recapture that water. AI could come in at some point, in some day, in some way, and literally create millions of dollars worth of value if we could get better, more accurate, more live updates on that specific KPI. And I'm sure there's a ton of other ones as well.
Yeah, I mean, with the future and the way, it's evolved so far, who knows? But I think that could be, to an extent, within the realm of possibility. So, we'll see. Time will tell. And, it depends on what the future holds. And speaking of the future, we talked a lot about, the past, your beginning, a little bit about the present, the industry, your practice specifically. What I want to focus on now, as we're coming ahead on time here, is your vision for the next 6 to 12 months. In a perfect world, what does that look like for you, your practice? And yeah, you already talked about the extent of the AI. So let's just keep it focused on, you and your practice. What are the goals, in other words, for the next 6 to 12 months?
I think we mentioned that I want to learn AEO. So I believe that AI is the future. I'm more of a doomer than I am I don't know, a boomer, an optimist. I don't know what you call it. I don't think AI is going to be nearly close to the hype that it's getting right now from people who obviously need it to, because they've spent a lot of money and have a lot riding on it working. Right. So I think AGI, if that comes about, is going to completely change the trajectory of humanity. If AGI never happens, I think, like if you're looking at some of these PE shops and how they're talking about the future, it's wild. Some people like are literally projecting a non-zero chance at human extinction. And then in the same graph, they're saying UBI is going to be necessary because you're going to have, what is it, de-inflation, or what is it called, where the value of a dollar goes in the opposite direction. It's not, anyways, it's fascinating to me, all the different potential outcomes. But one thing my conviction is that AI is going to be a lot more low and slow, and it may just supplement our lives and not necessarily, Skynet comes in and deletes the whole humanity, right? And for that reason, and my biggest bit of evidence that AI is absolutely changing our lives, whether you think AGI is coming or not, is because people in my life, family, friends, who are not tech savvy. And I mean, I'm talking like they resist downloading an app, and they can barely log into their email. They're using Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT. They're talking to it. It's doing Google searches for them, and they're believing it, which is a little bit terrifying too. But to me, what that tells me is, if I am going to run a business that requires marketing and leans on Google searches, right? SEO, I am not going to rest on my laurels and go, wow, SEO is like, our SEO is strong, so nothing to do here, right? No, Google searches are going to be replaced by AI searches. In fact, I'd argue they already have been. So I need to understand that and build it out. And again, I think what I learned, Michael, is that the best way to outsource is to learn it yourself first. And I'm not saying go be like a third degree black belt in something, but definitely don't be a white belt, right? Don't be a complete noob. You're going to get scammed, right? And even if you don't get scammed, you're going to spend too much money, right? Like the best way to operate a business is to have at least speak the language, not necessarily develop a mastery. You need people who are smarter and better than you at things and to specialize, but you also need to have a degree of understanding of stuff. So my goal, and this is a priority for me, is I want to understand how people are using AI to find my business and how I can make it easier for them to find me, even easier than they are right now, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, it does. That's, pretty common from what I've heard from other folks as well, on how they're trying to leverage it, get in touch with others. So, you're definitely not alone there. And I think there's, definitely a conversation there to be had. And that, really at the end of the day, everybody's going to use it for their own, specific needs. We want to make sure that it's being used correctly too. You mentioned that, AI search is going to replace, a Google search, which, yeah, it already has pretty much. If I go on Google and type something in, Gemini comes back with a response like, oh, yeah, here it is. And, you know, pretty accurate, but, we want to make sure we're crossing our T's, dotting our I's there. But, I'm not so much a doomer in the sense of that I think, it's going to take over. But, like I said, and pretty much everybody who's been on the podcast has said this as well, it's really just going to widen the gap between those who, do use it versus those who don't. So, to
Right.
your point, we want to make sure we're learning about it and, staying ahead of the curve. Even myself, I can take from that because even though I have my own AI automation agency, my partner usually handles most things on the technical side when it comes to implementation and coding. That is something that I am actively working on to get better at as well. So, in agreement with you there as well. And then, really, Ryan, so again, as we're coming up on time here, this has been one of the most, inspiring conversations we've had. You didn't just share numbers, you shared a true entrepreneur's mindset and a powerful message about taking the red pill and building your own future. So I want to thank you for your wisdom, the honesty, and the optimism. And for our listeners, if they want to learn more about you, what you do, potentially even work with you, where's the best place to do so?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you again for having me. But like we mentioned before we hit record here, why am I here? I'm here to help inspire others. I'm not selling anything. I don't want anything material, if you will. I want people to be inspired by my words. And if you are like me, 10, 11 years ago, and you need a mentor or you need someone to ask questions to, and you don't have any money, or even if you have money, you just want an honest opinion from someone, like, reach out to me. My name is Ryan Narus. It's spelled Narus. I believe I'm the only one in the world. You can Google search me. You can AI search me. And the first thing that'll come up is my LinkedIn and my website. And like Tupac says, I ain't hard to find. And that's on purpose because I want to make the world a better place because I was in it. And the way I feel like I'm going to do that best is in scale by going on podcasts, by reaching out to the world, and hopefully your audience or folks I've never interacted with before, they hear my words, they get inspired, they reach out. So again, I don't need anything if you're listening to this and you found some level of inspiration, please reach out to me. I'm here to help. So Michael, thank you for having me on, man. And hopefully together we can make the world a better place because we were in it.
Absolutely, Ryan. Thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it. Hope you have a good one. You take care.
Thank you.